The New York Knicks lose to the Boston Celtics 133-123. And we're going to talk to our guy, Brian Fonseca, to talk about this game. Brian, how you doing, man?
Had Jason Tatum over 25.5, and he had 25. And they intentionally fouled him at the end, and they did not call it, but they called the one on Derrick White. So not great, but
But
good.
that
Those are champagne problems. So we're doing all right.
listen, that hook will always get you, man. There's a couple things I want to talk to you about. Going into this game, we heard some quotes about Quentin Grimes, about his role. He was questioning it. Josh Hart's questioned his offensive role in this team. But Quentin Grimes, Tom Thibodeau announced right before the game that he's going to come off the bench tonight. He's not going to start. Dante DiVincenzo starts. And Grimes actually played okay. He gave you 13 points, hit 3 threes off the bench. Is that more suitable for a type of player Quentin Grimes is for this Knicks team?
It's interesting because I feel like Quentin Grimes, in theory, should be the plug and play like guy you can start who doesn't need high usage, who can play next to and off of a Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson or an RJ Barrett. Just didn't work out for whatever the reason is, and he obviously voiced some frustration with that, as you alluded to. And played well to his credit off the bench. I think Dante DiVincenzo got a meaningful contract this past year. He wasn't necessarily paid like a starter, but he's paid like a contributor, paid like a guy who could start or come off the bench. So I think it's worth trying him out in this role. Obviously, there's a level of comfort with him and Jalen Brunson in particular because of their Villanova connection and their Villanova days and things of that nature. But I think that with Dante DiVincenzo in the starting lineup, it allows for Quentin Grimes to then play off of Emmanuel quickly, to play off of Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein. That gives you what I think is still a solid bench unit. We'll see if it allows Grimes to do more because he's not going to be playing as much with Brunson, with Randall, with RJ Barrett. Like, could he in tune just develop better coming off the bench with little bit more usage, like maybe offensively it works out. And then obviously the perimeter defense has to be there. But all things considered, I thought that was a strong showing tonight.
Yeah, for the Knicks, they were down by 9 going into halftime. And then in the third quarter, it seemed to turn around for the Celtics. They kept scoring. The Knicks could not keep up with them. You see guys like Derrick White go off for 30 tonight. Kristaps Porzingis in his return tonight, he had 3 threes tonight. He shot, he hit you 21 points. I think the Knicks, they just, again, this is the same theme, and I want to ask you about, they just don't seem to have enough firepower, whether it be from three or just scoring, pure scores enough to keep up with these big name teams. I mean, you look at their in-season tournament loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, and it just didn't work out for them. Giannis and Lillard, all those guys, they have star power. The Knicks don't have it. And again, you saw it tonight. Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, these guys are all able to score and get in bunches for you. And it just feels like the Knicks just don't have enough to match that level. Am I right in thinking that?
You really see it late in games because that's where the offense kind of got really stagnant and they couldn't get anything going against the Boston Celtics, even not taking advantage of Jaylen Brown getting ejected. Probably not warranted, but he got ejected nonetheless. I think that this is something that's plaguing them against Boston, and we saw it effectively against Milwaukee at the end of the in-season tournament or their run in the in-season tournament. I think this is kind of what's holding them back, right? Is that offense generating it late in games. Usually it's kind of Jalen Brunson or bust. Julius Randle has his nights. RJ Barrett was off to a good start, dealt with the migraines and hasn't really, gotten back on track fully yet, although he's been better the last couple of nights. But I still think again it has to go beyond those guys. Like Emmanuel quickly is someone I would look to. Like if he's really going to take this next step and get the contract extension he wants,
Mm.
can he step up consistently? I think tonight he was okay, but you're probably going to need more than just okay if they're going to ascend. Like this is a different Nick team, but it's a similar run in terms of where they are to the 2012, 2013 team, a Nick team that I liked a lot. 54 wins, Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith was their second guy, like to give you an idea of where we were then as a basketball sort of league in the NBA. But I think with this team, needs is to close that gap a little bit more significantly because
Right.
that Nick team, it felt like the only team standing in their way was the Heat and then the Pacers in that playoff run, obviously. But here it feels like this Knicks team is further away from where Milwaukee could get to, where Boston could get to. They lost to Miami in the playoffs last year. Miami,
Mhm.
as we speak, are losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but they're not a team you could put the Knicks ahead of right now based off of last season and the fact that they have Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo when they're healthy. Philadelphia has Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. So how is it that you close the gap on this current roster, or do you have to go get help between now and February? Is
Right.
something that we're going to be monitoring.
I think that's the big thing I wanted to hit with you also. Listen, we heard the national pundits talk about the Knicks this week. Stephen A. Smith, Shaq, Charles Barkley, all those guys talking about, when they were eliminated from the in-season tournament, they just don't have, and we've talked about this, they don't have enough star power on this team. And then you heard RJ Barrett's comments before the game tonight where, he responded to the national criticism and says, you're mad at us when we're not playing well. And then we get a quality team and we make the playoffs. We're fine the way we are. We're happy with the way we're playing.
Right.
Jalen Brunson is a star. He provides a lot for them, but it just, again, they're going to be stuck between that 4 to possibly even 8 range. It feels like there's no above where you're not going to reach, to your point, the Bucks, the Heat, maybe, the 76ers. These are the Celtics, like tonight, you're not going to match with them. And this is a tough East. And like you said, is there a move you think that they can make before the trade deadline or at the trade deadline to boost this team and get some more scoring for them?
Yeah, it's so interesting because when you look at this team, like, first of all, this Knicks team is a good team. I want to get that straightforward. Like, they're a legitimately good team. But and you would categorize them if you look at where they are, like they're in probably that same bucket as the Heat, for example, the Sixers, whatever. But the difference is the Sixers have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey is a blossoming star.
Yeah.
If you wanted to argue Tyrese Maxey is better than everyone on the Knicks roster, including Jalen Brunson, like
He looks it.
we'll see where he's at the end of the season, but that's probably an argument you're going to win. And then Miami has Jimmy and Bam, who I would take above anybody on the Knicks roster. Like
Right.
that's sort of the difference, right? Jalen Brunson, is it Jalen Brunson needing a co-star? Is it just guys needing to be better? Is it just making the trade using whatever it is quickly, Barrett, picks, Grimes, whatever? Or is it a Randall deal who would probably get back less, but he's the guy that you probably want to move if you're looking at the future of this team. But it's clear that they have to do something because the Heat, while they don't profile as a team that's going to be a 1 seed or a 2 seed, they have something that can close that gap. Is they have Jimmy, they have Bam, they have the best coach in Eric Spoelstra. Philadelphia has an MVP on their roster and a rising star in Tyrese Maxey. We know what Boston is. We know what Milwaukee is, or at
Don't
least
forget about the Pacers who
they could
just,
be right. And
look,
we'll see where the Pacers are. But the thing is, Tyrese Halliburton is all of a sudden like he's going to be the
superstar.
guy.
He's a superstar.
Right. He's a superstar. And if he continues at his trajectory, he's going to be on some MVP ballots at the end of the year, like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was last year. So, how do the Knicks get in that conversation? If you're looking at who are the best players in the NBA, just as a regular, just straight up talking point, Jalen Brunson is probably behind all of those guys' best players that we're talking about, as is Julius Randle, obviously. So, how do the Knicks get there? That's going to be the biggest question that they have to answer because I like their team. Like they're tough, they defend, they can grind you. Jalen Brunson particularly is great in fourth quarters more often than he's not. They have real leadership. They're well coached, I think, by Tom Thibodeau. I know Knick fans would give him some slack, but like I would say he's one of the better half coaches in the NBA. But there's just something that they don't have that some of these other teams have that we're talking about. That how is it that they close that gap is the thing that we're going to need to find out within the next 2 months because the trade deadline is, it's a while from now, but it's only really 2 months away. So clock is ticking.
Clock is ticking. Tough loss for the Knicks again tonight, 133, 123. Jalen Brunson rolled his ankle towards the end of the game. Hopefully not a long-term injury. Next up for the Knicks, they're going to play the Toronto Raptors on Monday night at home and in the Garden. But, Brian, thank you so much again, man, for breaking this down and talking some Knicks basketball with us, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.